We have a lot of Heat news to discuss on today's show. I am Nick Roloff. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. Nikola Jovic, it's been 4 weeks since he suffered that fractured hand. We sort of have an update on him, and then we'll also talk about the latest around the NBA draft surrounding the Miami Heat, as we are just 11 games to go left in the season. Where do the Heat stand in the standings of the draft, and what would that look like? But we're going to start with Nikola Jovic because Erik Spoelstra, prior to the game against the Charlotte Hornets, was asked about his injury status, as it has been 4 weeks, and Spo said that the Heat are still waiting to receive an update on Jovic's broken hand so he can be reevaluated. It marks 4 weeks. It's interesting because the Heat only have about 2.5 weeks left in the season, so is there any point to even bring Jovic back? We'll discuss that more on today's show. But if you want Nikola Jovic to return and to recover and have a nice hand back in action, hit that thumbs up icon. If he scrolls across this video, I want him to know that Heat Nation has his back and is wishing him a speedy recovery, so hit that like button. Now, hopefully Nikola still isn't watching because I would like the Heat to shut him down. Listen, the Heat have no reason to bring him back. When you really think about it, he's a key piece to this roster, and he's one of the more important rotation guys. But the Heat aren't going to win anything this season, and the only way I think they bring him back is if they are ultimately in a playoff series, which would require them to win a couple play-in games, and then they would be in that 7-8 matchup, likely playing the Cavaliers. But Jovic, who has dealt with a lot of injuries, I would like to just see him recover. And yes, you look at his numbers, he's been incredible this year. He played 46 games, averaging 25 minutes a night, and he improved his point per game total by 3 on the last season. Actually, over the course of his career, he has improved every single season. Averaged 5.5 points per game his rookie year in limited action, then 7.7 last year, and it was on pace to average double-digit points this year, shooting relatively decent from the field, 45%, and still 37% from beyond the arc. And his value is more than just the box score to me, because at his size, 6'10", 6'11", he is able to make the right pass. He's an excellent high IQ basketball player, whether it's in the half court or when I like watching him play the most is when he gets a rebound defensively and he pushes the pace like you see Davion Mitchell do so often. And he always makes the right read when he's in transition. He brings a lot to the table, including spacing and handle. And you see it in the record. Ever since he got hurt on that February 23rd game against the Milwaukee Bucks, the Heat have a 4-13 record. And you can point to a lot of different reasons on why the Heat are struggling. And I'm not going to say it's all on Nikola Jovic, but he is a very integral part of this team. I'm not going to act like the entire reason the Heat have been one of the worst teams in basketball over the past month is because Jovic has been hurt. And that is not a good enough excuse. If you had Bam or Hero hurt, that is an excuse because that's one of your top leading players and specifically on the offensive end. Jovic is very, very talented, very, very good, but it's not like he is a driving force of this offense. He's just a really good complementary player. So it's not an excuse to why the Heat are losing, but it is obviously hurting Miami that they don't have Nikola out there. And it hurts us as Heat fans because I think we can all agree Jovic's ceiling is pretty high. And he's still very, very young. He was only 18 years old when he got drafted. He's still continuing to put on weight. He's only 21 years old. He's continuing to learn what it takes to be a high-level, efficient rotation player in the NBA. And with the size, the shooting, the playmaking, the ceiling is still very, very far away. We don't know what it could be for Nikola, and we want to see him on the court. Which brings me to this question. Should the Heat bring Nikola Jovic back, even if it is just for the couple play-in games potentially, a playoff series, or maybe the last 2 or 3 games in the regular season? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Today's pinned comment, type Y for yes or type N for no. Now, I will say on Nikola Jovic, as highly as I think about him, and if you've watched the channel for a while, you know how high I am, going all the way back to the 2023 offseason when I was not going to be happy if they included him in that Damian Lillard package. I ultimately said I would have traded him, but it would have made me very, very sad. I am concerned about his stability, though, because if you look in his first 3 seasons in the NBA, he has failed to play a lot of games. Obviously, as a rookie, he was not on the court at all, basically a non-factor for that team, only appearing in 15 games. But over the last 2 seasons, he's been a part of this team. Only played in 46 games this season so far. And last year, he only played in 46 games. Granted, he was in the G League to start the first month and a half of the year, and then he started to crank on in the second half of the year. But there is this point. Nikola Jovic is an injury-prone guy. It's hard to admit, but with the fractured hand, he's had back issues. He's dealt with ankle problems as well. When you look at a third-year guy, and he has only played as much as 46 games in 2 of the 3 seasons, 15 in the other one, there is a cause for concern. And you wonder how stable this is going to be, how concerning this is. How consistent will this be throughout his career? Because we've seen players of his size that play on the perimeter, move the way he does, get injured and have injury issues. I'm hoping if Nikola Jovic is on the roster in 2025-26 season, that he is able to put together a 65 games played plus season to ease that concern from me and a lot of the Heat fans out there. All right, we're going to get to the second half of the video on the NBA draft here in just a second, but we are sponsored by PrizePicks, my favorite daily fantasy sports platform. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stat projections, and you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. And I know basketball season is winding down, but springtime is here and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks lineup, whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs. Take your pick of more or less for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash today. You can also mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite baseball players with basketball, hockey, esports, and much more. I have an entry for season long in baseball, for example, more than Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal strikeouts, more than Jaron Duran home runs. You can combine these players with basketball players, hockey players, season long, daily, it doesn't matter. You can customize the way you play with PrizePicks. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That link is in the description and comments of today's video. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, the Heat finally snapped their 10-game losing streak yesterday against the Charlotte Hornets in a blowout win. Shout out to Andrew Wiggins for scoring 42 points. But I wanted to look at where the Heat stand in the NBA draft as of right now. And when you look at the Heat's current draft picks, they have the 8th overall pick, their own selection. That's where it stands even after the win. And then they obviously also hold the Golden State Warriors pick, that coming in the Jimmy Butler trade. That is currently 21st overall in the NBA draft. So they would have 2 selections as of right now because remember, this pick is top 14 protected. And when you look at the lottery standings, the Heat have a pretty good hold on the 8th spot right now. They are 1 full game up on the Chicago Bulls for the 8-9 spot. And then both the Spurs and Trailblazers are 1.5 games back. So even though the Heat won, it does not completely ruin the tank. Shout out to the Bulls for beating both the Kings and Lakers on the West Coast. Maybe they could beat the Denver Nuggets on Monday night as well to continue to push themselves farther back from the Heat. But you've got to, if you're someone rooting for draft picks like I am, you got to root for the Heat to lose almost every game, which I know it's hard to do. Or you could just root for the Bulls, Spurs, and Blazers to win every game because as long as the Bulls, Spurs, and Blazers keep on winning, they can't catch the Heat in the standings. And in my opinion, the Heat need to get the 8th pick. And I know there will be beat reporters. There are people out there that want the Heat to continue to win. They want to make the playoffs because they do not want to give up unprotected picks in 2026 and 2028, which would be the consequences of missing the playoffs this season. Because remember, if they miss the playoffs, this pick is not conveyed, which means it's 2026 unprotected to OKC. And because you have an outstanding pick in 2027, you can't have back-to-back years of your pick being traded. So that gets pushed back to 2028, where it is unprotected to Charlotte. And I know people are going to be concerned, well, I don't want to give up unprotected picks, because what if we stink? Well, you stink now. So you might as well take a pick in the top 8 in a draft class that is loaded and would guarantee you a very good player, which we'll talk about them in just a second. But I want you to fill in the blank for me. The Heat will be picking blank in 2025. Don't care about the Golden State Warriors pick. All I care about is that other Heat pick. Will they be making a selection there in the lottery? And if they do, where will it be? Get your votes down in the comment section. And why it's so important for me to stay in the top 8. Now, granted, maybe you are in the top 8 in the lottery standings, and then it does not go your way, and you get pushed back to 9 to 10 because another team behind you moved up inside the top 4. That would be devastating, but at worst, you have a very, very high chance of being in that top 8, which would give you a guarantee of one of these players. Obviously, Cooper Flagg is the headliner. You would love to get that number 1 overall pick. Dylan Harper continues to be my number 2 guy, and if you can't get Cooper Flagg, the best fit for the Heat would be Dylan Harper. But you guys like Yakachonis, Edgecombe, Johnson, Bailey, Kneppel, Fears, like all 8 of these players, if you put them on the Miami Heat, are game changers. And I know some are game changers more than others, but these players, and all of them will not be successful in the NBA. But to me, they all have an outstanding chance of being high-level rotation players, if not stars, inside the association. I expect Cooper Flagg to be an all-NBA guy. I think Dylan Harper has a good chance to be an all-NBA guy at one point in his career. And everybody else has all-star talent as well. So to me, it is imperative that this season continues the way it's been going over the last month and a half. The Heat continue to lose, and they are picking inside the top 8. So you might be asking, well, what's the Heat's remaining schedule? There's 11 games remaining, all of them on screen right now. Obviously, the highly anticipated game against the Golden State Warriors on Tuesday where Jimmy Butler returns to the building, but you got tough games against the Celtics, against the Hawks, the Bucks, the Grizzlies. The Bulls are no gimme, especially considering they've beat you twice already this season, that one being in Chicago. There's an interesting blend of relatively easier games, like the Heat will be favored likely in those 2 games against Washington. I bet they'll be favored in at least one of the 2 games against the 76ers, and they'll probably be favored against the Pelicans as well because they've been playing really bad. But to me, when you look at the last 11 games of the season, I don't want the Heat to make the playoffs. I think I made that abundantly clear. I need the Heat to go 4-7 at best. If you go 4-7 and those 11 games on the screen that I just showed you, I think that lands you yourself in the top 8 or 9. Because I think the Spurs, the Blazers, and Bulls will at worst go 3-8 in their final 11 or 12 games. And if they do that at worst, because they've been playing much better than Miami as of late, then they probably won't be able to jump the Heat for that 8th overall pick if Miami goes 3-8 or 4-7 themselves respectively. And I know some people might ask, what is the importance of that top 8 spot? Well, look at the difference between pick number 8 and pick number 9, even if you just fell back one spot. If you have the 8th best chances in the lottery, going into the lottery balls being selected, you have a 26.3% chance of jumping inside the top 4, which would guarantee you Dylan Harper, Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, Kasparas Yakachonis, one of your choices. And you have a 6% chance of getting that number 1 pick, which would land you Cooper Flagg, assuming he comes out. Now, you just move back down one spot, you lose 6% odds on moving inside the top 4. That's a pretty gnarly difference. Now, the number 1 pick chances don't change that much, only down 1.5%, but that top 4 selection is where I think it's more important for Miami, and 6% decrease is a pretty big dagger. And I know some people might ask, can you get to the 7th spot? No, the Toronto Raptors currently hold the 7th best odds in the lottery. Heat are obviously number 8, and the difference in games played and their games back is 6. I don't think the Heat are making up 11 games or 6 games in the last 11 games. Miami would legitimately have to go 0-11, and the Raptors would have to play 500 ball. That's not going to happen. Toronto's really bad. So the Heat can get as high as 8, in my opinion, and if they fall down to as far as probably about 11, where we talked about with the Blazers going into the play-in. All right, that'll do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed because we're going to continue to bring you content at the remainder of the season, and then we'll look ahead to the offseason as well. So hit that sub button, and make sure you join us on Tuesday evening because we'll be live on the channel for Jimmy Butler's return to the 305.